right. So thank you so much for joining today, guys. This is the Pop Health Show. The show is for anyone that has a super strong passion, as you know, for emerging technologies. We talk a lot lately about decentralized culture. We talk a lot about AI. We talk a lot about impact and this new theme of assets. But most importantly, we love to have people like Joseph on the show. So Joseph Argiro is with Iron Key Capital. So he has a very interesting background, but most importantly, I don't want to steal his thunder. He is the founder of Iron Key Capital. He's doing some amazing stuff in the Web3 space. He's doing some things that will come out on this show, but I'm really glad to have Joseph on the show. Joseph, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Great to have you on. And maybe you can take us back and teleport us back to where things started for you. What led you down the path to where you're at today? You're working on some pretty interesting stuff, but tell me your origin story.
Sure. So my origin story goes back to 2015, when I built a company that resembled Uber and Airbnb for college tours. So marketplace platform business model to allow students to circumvent the college touring system. Had some problems with that, but really that's where I developed my thesis around that the marketplace platform business model is just the next evolution of blockchain. I messed that up. And that's really what led me to the thesis that blockchain is just the next evolution of the marketplace platform business model. So in the first bull run in 2017, I joined a startup as the second employee called ICOalert.com. So if you Google coin offering in 2017, we were the top search result on Google.
Wow.
So my job was to report on and aggregate 50 to 100 data points on every blockchain startup that ever existed to a community of around 10,000 retail ICO investors. And through that work, I developed a lens into what makes a blockchain startup or an ICO successful. And that's what led me to found Iron Key Capital, which is an investment management company across liquid and venture assets in the space.
Nice. So Joseph, tell me a little bit more about Iron Key Capital. Like what type of deals, opportunities are you looking for? And obviously it's dual-sided too, right? So you have different investors, different backgrounds as well. So you want investors, you want to be able to syndicate deals and things like that. But tell me about the process of starting that. What are you looking for on both sides of that? What type of themes are you looking to invest in? And just love to hear your thoughts about the market. Obviously, we're living in a really interesting post-Bitcoin ETF world, right before the Bitcoin halving. Lots of new narratives. Just love to hear more about that. Yeah.
Sure. So my background after ICO Alert was working in the digital innovation, blockchain innovation lab at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So enterprise adoption of blockchain. And I was unable to get funding for any of the open source permissionless protocols that I wanted to integrate into the enterprise, which is why I ended up leaving, but also how I developed my investment thesis in crypto, in that the thesis is that real world economic activity will start to get impacted by Web3 technologies. So that is how Iron Key Capital came about. We look at liquid tokens primarily from 500 and 3,000 in market cap, and offer investors a diversified portfolio to emerging stage crypto on the hedge fund side. On the venture side, we share that investment thesis, but we look at writing $150,000 checks into pre-seed or seed stage Web3 companies with a mix of equity and tokens. And what we found is that a large majority of the time, the value will accrue to either the equity or the token in the long run. There are some outlier examples there that don't fit that example. For example, BNB coin is a good example that doesn't fit that thesis. But we found that the overwhelming majority, 99% of the time, that's not the case. So that is really where the mindset that we're approaching ventures from is from a value accrual standpoint across equity and tokens.
Nice, nice. And tell me a little bit more about what you see happening now, right? So enterprise adoption is really important. Reality merging with the concept of tokenization, right, is a big theme. And obviously RWA is a big theme of that. But you also have a lot of two other new emerging technology trends as well. I'd love your take on to see if there's a convergence point. Metaverse was very hot pre-bear market, right? Is metaverse still hot? Spatial computing. I'm sure your TikTok and Instagram feed is full of people now, using the new Vision Pro on Apple. There's also AI, of course. I mean, AI is just changing and driving everything. Some new chains that have AI narrative baked into them. It's hard to tell which chains really do have AI baked into them and why that's important. But tell me a little bit more about some of the exciting technologies, any use cases, maybe some deal flow you're already getting that is pretty promising. And yeah, just tell me a little bit more about what excites you.
Sure. I think that one narrative that I'm seeing time and time again in crypto these days is real world assets.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of hype and chatter about them on LinkedIn and socials, but the reality is that there is very, very little volume of real world assets being actually traded on a blockchain anywhere. So it's really just a narrative right now. We haven't really seen liquidity pick up there. I think what's interesting in that space, what we're more interested in when it comes to real world assets is the physical to digital networks and things, use cases that in crypto that will actually coordinate real world activity to be. Give me a second. I'll come back to that.
No worries.
So what we're focused on when it comes to real world assets is the subset that's focused on that's actually called DPIN, or decentralized physical to digital networks. This trend was started by the Helium network a couple of years ago. Now we're starting to see other implementations of real world networks that are being bootstrapped with crypto economic incentives. So I think that's and Helium gave the way to unlock other use cases in that space, like decentralized 5G and some other interesting applications of Web3 that impact the real world. So that's really a narrative that I think has teeth moving forward in real world assets, which is the blending together decentralized physical and digital.
Yeah, no, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. Yeah, IoTex is an investor in us, right? And so IoTex is doing some phenomenal work in DPIN. I think there's HiveMapper as well with the drivers, right? It's kind of like, leveraging the gig workers and meshing that real world. So DPIN does seem like a real important narrative. I saw an estimate, I think end of last year, Deloitte saying $16 trillion of assets will now be, coming online, impact assets, climate credits, carbon credits, climate credits. There's 170 different credits just in impact alone. And obviously a lot of Fortune 5000 companies have to do these offsets and they're probably going to consolidate. But what are some other maybe real world asset use cases, and why would that be the case? I mean, you hear a lot of discussions about just like what Helium is doing and HiveMapper is doing as well. Could DPIN and RWA have a convergence point with supply chain, right? And can you tokenize supply chains? Can you tokenize warehouses? That's a big discussion lately. Can you tokenize the vehicles that are idle somewhere, or a fleet that's idle, and tokenize that and put those assets to work through tokens? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me a little bit more on maybe some of the asset categories or maybe other use cases that are pretty promising.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on your DPIN examples, one that's I think really tangible is Demo, which is allowing you to generate rewards from your actual vehicle, right? Yeah. So taking that vehicle data and turning it into tokenized rewards, I think is is a great example. To also to piggyback on the Go project in that in climate tech specifically is that I think there's a real convergence happening with real world assets and impact technology. And an example of an idea in that space is actually turning the carbon credits or real world assets into turning carbon credits into a stable coin backed by real world assets in the impact space, whether that's carbon credits or carbon offset allowances, you name it. But theoretically, you could have a better stable coin model that's backed by these type of impact assets, which are real world assets. So
Yeah.
I think that's really, I think, just an example of kind of where we see real world assets converging with impact technology and something that we dearly need, which is better stablecoin technology. So I think that's kind of where I see like an intersection of these sectors.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I haven't heard of that company, or maybe I'll need to research that company as well. But it is fascinating, like almost like anything that has value, the notion of value is just changing. It's phenomenal, right? It's almost like economic alchemy that we're in. Obviously, these asset managers, right, post ETF world, they're looking at where their next block of assets are going to be, and so the digitization of what's happening out there is pretty exciting. Joseph, I can imagine I know you're super busy, right? And so tell me a little bit, and you're doing some amazing work. Tell me a little bit about what takes up most of your days and times. As we all know, Web3 doesn't sleep, right? And it definitely doesn't sleep in this bull market or pre-super cycle, whatever we're in right now. Now's the time that everyone is like, drinking a little bit more coffee than ever to make sure that the opportunity, gets where it needs to go. What's your day in the life like? Like, what are you working on next? Obviously, you've done a lot of good work and put together the next iteration of Iron Key Capital. Tell me what you're working on now or what you're going to work on in the future. And then also, I just love to hear about your vision of the future. What does success look like for you over the next at least 2 to 3 years?
Sure. So the way I'm spending my time these days is really on the passion component for venture that I've developed over the last 18 months. And what we're building towards is a venture community that lives on chain.
Yeah.
So we have investment syndicate and we have an angel investor education program. That's an 8 crash course in Web3, angel investing and venture.
Yeah.
And the reason why I've dedicated so much time to this in the last year is that a lot of the Web 2 educational programs around venture capital are broken. And we realized we could rebuild that business model better as a DAO at a lower price point with a better product to actually help really qualified people in the Web3 space take all the guesswork out of getting into angel investing and venture capital in an 8-week crash course, and then give you access to the network, the tools, the resources that you need to be successful, whether it's having one foot in this space as you work on your full-time job or company. And we're really building that foundational community to help people on that journey.
Nice.
So it's not really where my time is being spent, and really looking to open up that community on chain over the next 6 to 9 months to really allow anyone to participate in this ecosystem and get involved.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's really exciting, right? Especially, in a post ETF world where hopefully Bitcoin and blockchain, it sounds like it's going to become more of a household name. And so your traditional investor doesn't have that exposure now. Their financial advisor should have said something to them about, wait on Bitcoin or now's the time to get into the ETF. And so it's great that you're educating, to have an education side to it as well too, because obviously a lot of angel investors are looking for diversification. A lot are also nervous with the fluctuations that go on with tech and the fluctuations that AI builds into it too, right? They did an angel investments on a few things past few years, and GPTs are popping up and changing, really throwing monkey wrenches into those businesses and those distribution models, because now you have GPTs that do that thing. So So yeah, it is fascinating. Congratulations to your work. I'm assuming that, for our listeners out there, there's probably two intake processes, right? There's for Iron Key Capital, you're looking for angel investors, early stage founders, right? You're looking for deal flow as well. I'm assuming like you can go to Iron Key Capital's website and engage in both of those intake processes. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we offer the venture DAO model to experienced angel investors who either have access to deal flow or investors. They can plug into our community that way and actually get compensated in equity and carried interest for participating. And then we also have the Venture Fellow program, which is the educational side of people, which is an MBA level program that's designed to teach people the 0 to 1 skill set of a Web3 angel investor. And that's really getting people comfortable on writing their first or maybe second angel check. And they want to take this a little bit more seriously. And that's really where you can hone your skill set and evolve into the venture partner role as time goes on. But those are the two ways that you can plug in. You can definitely find us on at ironkeycapital.com, and we'd love to hear from you.
Nice. Well, Joseph, I think in this episode, in this microcast that we do, and we try and do it and contain it in a time that someone's driving from their next place to the other, super valuable. Most importantly, information, but even more important than that, I was very excited to hear about your background and what got you started. I'm a big fan of always origin stories and what got people where they needed to go. So it's really exciting to hear where you started off, what you're working on now, what your vision of the future is. You're doing super important work. I've always been fascinated with this model that you've been doing. I think it's extremely needed. I think it's going to be a blessing to see it grow and expand, and also to see the amount of companies that you're going to be able to help through this model. And I think it's going to be even a more superior model than what we've seen in a lot of different angel groups around. So kudos to your work. Keep growing it, keep scaling it. If there's any support you need from our community, let us know, of course. And but it was great having you on. And then what I'd love to do is have you on in maybe 6 or 12 months again in the future, just to hear about some of the companies and success stories of funding stories that you've had. But it is an exciting time, and obviously just keep going and doing what you're doing. This was great, really, to do this show. To our listeners out there, this is the Pop Health Show. The show is for anyone that has a super strong passion in emerging technologies and how these emerging technologies are making an impact on our society. Joseph, my very last question for you. If anyone wanted to get in touch with you, obviously there's your website, but what would be the best way to interact with you on LinkedIn or Twitter, or if you want that to even occur?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Twitter at Iron Key Capital or Joseph Argiro, just my name, first and last name. And we're definitely ramping up a Twitter presence, so happy to see you there.
Super. Well, thank you so much for peeling off time to do this with me. This was very rewarding, and congratulations on all the success you're doing, and continued success to you, Joseph. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Amazing, Anthony. Yep. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much.